Eddie was Mike's best man at their wedding. Debbie was Elizabeth's matron of honor. The five of them spent a few days together at a magnificent villa in the south of France. Debbie and Jeanette had made plans to head on to Spain and leave Eddie with Mike and Elizabeth, to give Eddie the space Debbie had learned he needed and apparently preferred. Debbie described her last night at the villa in her 1988 book, Debbie, My Life. Neither Eddie or I drank in those days, but at dinner I asked the butler to bring him a beer. Eddie was in a good mood whenever he was with the Todds, and the beer loosened him up more. He was acting as if I were actually his wife, even showing affection. After dinner, Jeanette went up to bed. The rest of us moved from the dinner table to the library. I ordered Eddie a second bottle of beer. The ice melted entirely. He got drunk on 2 beers that night. Not only that, but he had become very amorous. Elizabeth and Mike had put him in the mood, or he forgot whom he was with. It was a happy time with all of us entertaining each other with stories and jokes. Eventually, they went off to make love, and I turned to Eddie and said, "Why don't we do the same?" And so we did. I had wanted another child as soon after Carrie as possible. I had hoped she would have a brother who could be as close in age to her as I am to my brother Bill. Bill was always my strength and my ally when I was growing up. He still is to this day. I wanted Carrie to have that too. At that stage of my marriage to Eddie, he wasn't interested in sleeping with me. There was less and less opportunity for me to get pregnant. I just remember praying to God that night that I would be pregnant. We had a good time, and there weren't many of those. I just knew when I left that I was pregnant. I couldn't have known, but I knew. 9 months later, Debbie Reynolds gave birth to me. They named me Todd Emanuel, Todd for Mike Todd, and Emanuel after Manny Sachs, the recording executive who started Eddie on his recording career. Mike and Elizabeth came to see me, and Mike was thrilled to have his best friend's son named after him. For the first time in our marriage, I finally felt very happy and secure, my mother would later write. Unfortunately, it didn't last. On March 22, 1958, when I wasn't quite 4 weeks old, Mike Todd was killed in a plane crash in New Mexico. About a month later, my father left my mother for his best friend's widow, Elizabeth Taylor. As my sister Carrie described it decades later in a book called Wishful Drinking, my father flew to Elizabeth's side, gradually making his way slowly to her front. Debbie was devastated, numb as she described it, blank, as if I were alone on top of a mountain, like floating in space. It was one of Hollywood's biggest, most notorious scandals. The world was stunned. Eddie and Elizabeth were vilified. Eddie was declared a philandering, opportunistic loser, and Elizabeth was labeled a bad girl, home-wrecking slut. Debbie, the good girl, the innocent, unsuspecting victim and single mom, was globally embraced with love and sympathy. Carrie and I were too young to remember the insane tabloid-feeding frenzy. But I do have one flash of a visual and an emotional memory in the aftermath of our parents' breakup that is as vivid to me today as if it were the morning it happened. Mom and Carrie and I were still in the Conway Drive house we'd lived in with Eddie before he left. I was maybe 2 years old, sitting on the floor, happily playing with my toys. Carrie, age 4, was standing on the couch, staring out the window at the street, watching for our father, who was supposed to pick us up for a visitation. He never came. I couldn't have cared less. You can't miss what you've never had, after all, and our father was a virtual stranger to me. But I knew Carrie was upset, and I didn't like it that this Eddie person, this dad, had made my sister cry. My childhood memories don't really come into sharp focus until we were living at 813 Greenway Drive in Beverly Hills. When you're a child, your home is your universe, and my universe on Greenway Drive was heaven on earth. My mom was fun and funny and playful